listening if you're doing other things. Ken Ham. Well, he's the gift that keeps on giving. Now, if you followed my work, you know that I toured the Creation Museum, shot a video. In fact, you can find it on YouTube. It's awesome. It's called Atheists at the Creation Museum. I think it runs like 12 minutes. And we go through just exhibit by exhibit, looking at the insanity of it all, right? My favorite is the incest exhibit, right, where they justify incest. Well, the incest back then was just fine. And, there's like a dinosaur with a saddle on it for the children at the end and all those types of things. Well, it was just, I guess it's been a couple of years that Matt Dillahunty and I met at the Ark Encounter. There was an Ark Encounter tour of atheists. And so, we end up going there, and I shot a video of it and sort of showed you what we were talking about. And it was just the biggest anticlimax at least in Kentucky. And the Ark Encounter was this monstrosity, this huge, unbelievable paperweight, this $100 and whatever million paperweight that they had built. And, it was like, somehow this is going to attract people from all over the world on a continued basis. And of course, the financials are coming in and it does not look good. So anyway, Ken Ham posts some article about his upcoming book, go figure, and he grabbed a quote from me to help talk about the book. Okay, well, I know why he does this kind of stuff. It's because he's hoping that I'll talk about it. And if he's genuinely sincere, and I'm not going to decide what his intentions are. I don't know. Is he a con man, or is he genuinely an indoctrinated evangelical who believes he's doing God's good work? I can't know that. I really do not know. It's very possible that he's absolutely 100% sincere, extremely deluded in this belief that the earth is younger than the Sumerian civilization, and that camels and penguins boarded an ark in the heat of the desert 4,000 years ago, and that man's sin is responsible for pretty much everything from weeds. And this is true. In the Creation Museum, they have an exhibit that shows somebody having to till a garden and take weeds out of the garden. Well, the reason, I'm going to go to the chat room, by the way, I'll put that on screen. And the reason we have weeds, you see, is that Eve and Adam were tempted in the garden, and they bit down on the forbidden fruit, and they were cast out, and now we're all infected with original sin. We have weeds, okay? And he does this with a straight face. And it is very possible that he genuinely believes this stuff. I'm going to try to align my camera here, sorry. Okay, so the article comes out. I guess he's got lucky us, he has a new book coming out, and he decides he is going to quote Seth Andrews, the atheist. He sort of sells it in this narrative that I'm this joyless atheist, which is what he does. It sounds like my father. When I'm trying to tell my dad, I've never been more comfortable in my own skin. I've never been happier in my life. I feel so good. And he's like, no, you don't. No, Dad, I've never been happier and more fulfilled and sort of more in tune with the world and reality. I've never been in a better place in my whole life, ever. Nah, yeah, that's not true. So he declares this, well, of course, you don't have my Jesus, you can't be happy. And I'm like, no, I'm really happy. No, you're not. No, you're not. Well, this is kind of what Ken Ham does. Now, I realize that he likes to sort of poke at the atheists, just like the atheists sort of poke back at him. And I genuinely think it's probably a marketing ploy. I'm not completely oblivious to why he may have quoted me in the article. But it's not like, and I don't care what Ham or anybody else, the Ray Comforts of the world, the William Lane Craigs of the world, it's not like people who are watching this video, who are participating on my Facebook page, Twitter page, YouTube channel, coming out to my speaking events, the people who are involved in the skeptical movement as a whole. It's not like we see an article or we see a book released by Ken Ham, and lo and behold, there is angel song and a harp bliss, and there are rays of golden light coming down from on high, and they rush to Ken Ham's Ark Encounter or Creation Museum or Answers in Genesis website and say, I was so deceived. I was so wrong, so cloaked in sin. I slough off these sinful ideas and now embrace young earth creationism and a literal Bible. Thank you, Ken Ham. Do I think that happens ever? No. Oh, no. Ken Ham may think that, and he may sell that narrative. But, it's not like I'm worried about somebody hearing this and going, oh, I need to go buy Ken Ham's book right away. And man, I need to go and supplement this man's income, his ministry income and personal income with my book dollars. Nobody's going to do that. They're going to wait, and maybe somebody like Hugo and Jake or somebody else will actually review it for the rest of us, just like I paid the admission, a discounted admission to the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter so that I could then come and tell you about it so you could just pretty much save your money, like the mystery has been solved. Okay? The article says, and this is posted, of course, at answersingenesis.org. Where are the coming generations headed, it says. Written by Ken Ham, February 12th, 2019. Yesterday. Matt Dillahunty brought this to my attention. That was awesome. He said, with the New Year celebrations and resolutions behind us, I'm sorry to have to do this, but I'm going to give you a most pessimistic outlook for 2019. Now, as discouraging as this is, I really want this letter to encourage our supporters like you who are behind the ministry of Answers in Genesis. The pessimistic outlook doesn't come from anyone here at AIG. I hope that's a sigh of relief! Exclamation point. In fact, with each year that passes, and there have been 25 years since we started AIG, we continue to see God's goodness and faithfulness at AIG, just AIG over and over again here. As we look forward to 2019, I'm excited about what God will accomplish in the year ahead. That optimism, however, can't be said of atheist Seth Andrews. Dun, dun, dun. His thoughts are summed up in two of his sentences. You don't owe others comfort. You owe yourself a life of integrity, lived on your own terms. All right, I'll read you the entire post from it was pre-New Year, sometime. You don't owe others comfort. You owe yourself a life of integrity, lived on your own terms. Okay, I actually think this is a meritorious statement. I mean, even quote mined as it is, it's a meritorious statement. And I think it is something that Ken Ham would probably adhere to in his own life. You think he's out trying to make the non-believers in Christianity comfortable? No. He's out trying to, if he is sincere, to live a life of integrity based on his theology. And if others are uncomfortable, it just means that they're in sin and that they need to come back. Their discomfort is actually perhaps even healthy in their rebellion against God. So what he's sort of decrying as this somehow sad statement, this sad way of living, is something he would likely embrace in the context of his own evangelism. He says, this outlook is so sad, but it represents where the coming generations and the culture as a whole are currently heading. This only burdens me to make sure Answers in Genesis, the Creation Museum, and the Ark Encounter are more active than ever. Hang on. Oh. Oh boy. Woo! Okay, Andrew's New Year's message urged his followers to embrace what amounts to the sin of Adam, as recorded in Genesis 3, 1 through 5. And he quotes the verse, he said to the woman, did God actually say, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? You will not die. You will be like God. The devil told Adam and Eve that they could decide truth for themselves and be their own gods. And that's how our sin nature, inherited through Adam, can affect each one of us. Blah, 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 blah. Then he gets more into this sort of original sin narrative, which makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, morally, historically, it makes no sense. It's like you getting the death penalty for a parking violation that your great, 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 great ad nauseum grandfather got, okay? This atheist post is really all about promoting a life that has no meaning, purpose, and hope, and that's increasingly where the coming generations and our culture are heading. No wonder people turn to drugs, promiscuity, and suicide. You had me till suicide. The people of this ministry know we should submit every area of our life to our Creator, lived on His terms, and He has blessed us beyond measure. I want you to read this atheist New Year's greeting carefully and weep as you do, as you understand the total purposelessness of those without salvation in Christ. Of course, what he should have added at the bottom of this post was something like, then you will die and cease to exist, so it's all ultimately meaningless and purposeless anyway. The end. And now we all see our Western world changing before our eyes. People are leaving the church, blah, blah, blah. He goes off, and essentially he's just shilling for his book. In fact, we go down to the bottom, and I'm fine to mention the title of it because I have absolute confidence that there is not one person who is an atheist in this audience that's going to be like, hey, you know what? Mr. Ham's making really good sense. All this science and reason and evidence is just a bunch of bullshit. Whoops, I'm not allowed to say bullshit under the eyes of God. I'm going to rush to whatever Christian bookstore or Amazon and buy his new book. It's called Glass House, Shattering the Theory, and he slashes out theory, Shattering the Myth of Evolution, Ken Ham, Bodie Hodge, General Editors. This is the kind of book that happens when you get your science education from magical thinkers. Okay? Now, just another segment of the article. As the old saying goes, those who live in glass houses should not throw stones, and that's what makes Glass House, Shattering the Myth of Evolution, a perfect title for this new book. Evolutionists frequently attack creationists, trying to convince people that their evolutionary worldview is built on solid foundations, blah, blah, blah. And they have a crack research team that has helped to put this book together. Did you catch the ending of Seth Andrews' post? He asks, may 2019 bring us toward a more rational world? This statement implies that Christianity is irrational. Yeah. No, I don't imply it. I declare it. You are selling the story written by anonymous primitives that a wizard conjured hundreds of billions of galaxies so that we could be the center of everything. He would then make a dirt man and a rib woman in an enchanted garden. But yea, oh yea, they would be led astray because you, God, put temptation directly in their path, and then a talking snake caused them to stray. A single yet innocuous and completely harmless mistake that would somehow warrant damnation and torment, unspeakable torment for billions upon billions of people. God, in his omniscience, would not see this coming and would have implemented the plan anyway. Also, this is the same God who created Lucifer. That's right, omniscient God didn't realize the creation of his own arch nemesis would be a problem. Lucifer falls from grace. You can get into the Lucifer story in the Old Testament, the Satan story about the adversary. That's a whole other ballgame. God still doesn't see that that's a problem. He had continued with the plan anyway, so he has to drown the entire population except for one family who committed incest to repopulate the earth. Of course, this has penguins walking 8,000 miles from polar regions to board a stadium-sized boat in the desert built by a 500-year-old guy using only trees and tar. By the way, this story supposes that no one else on planet Earth owned a boat. Incest repopulates the earth. Holy shit, it still didn't work out. God requires another sacrifice. Why would an omnipotent God require anything? I don't know. But he does. He requires blood sacrifice, and so he makes his son a God-man on earth, born of a virgin like other gods, pre-Christian gods. That's a whole other deal there. And then he is pinned ultimately to a few pieces of wood, disappears for 3 days. And this is chronicled decades after it supposedly happened by people whose names we do not even know, and then translated and retranslated over a period of 2,000 years, so that not even the fundamentals of the faith can be agreed on by apologists like Ken Ham. Yes, I don't believe the story. God. Yeah, I've got a few doubts. Yeah. And all the guilt and shame you toss in my direction it just bounces off. I mean, what are you talking about? What's that meme that goes around when they're talking about someone who's trying to attack you with threats of hell? They might as well be, Ken Ham might as well be threatening to punch me in my aura. It has to be eternal. Life must be eternal to have meaning. Are you shitting me? You know, I'm drinking a cup of coffee right here. It's delicious. A little bit of Splenda and half, perfectly mixed. I love this cup of coffee. You know, this will be over. I'll finish the entire cup in probably the next 15 minutes. And then it will be gone. Was that cup of coffee not worth drinking? You know, your favorite pieces of music have a limited time span. If I hear a favorite song in my life, it's only 4, 5, 6 minutes long, maybe a longer piece of music, 12 minutes long, and then that piece of music has a final note. Is that not a piece of music worth listening to? Is it not still beautiful? You can fall in love. You can love someone who has a temporary life. Maybe they die before you do because that love was temporary. Was it not worth having? This whole idea that something has to last forever to be valuable is absolutely ridiculous. Look, the very temporary nature of this life, the finite nature of our existence and the things we have and the relationships we have, the things that we do, the fact that it's not eternal is what makes every single moment most precious. And I don't have to have my purpose spoon-fed to me by the authors of some superstitious holy book. I can self-generate my own sense of purpose. Dan Barker's got a great book. It's a play on the Rick Warren book, who had written Purpose-Driven Life. Dan Barker had written a book called Life-Driven Purpose. We generate our own sense of purpose. Why in the world would you have to have your purpose handed to you by somebody else? This is who you are. This is what you're like. This is what you think. This is what you'll do. This is how you'll live. This is how you'll die. How pathetic an existence is that? What a wasted existence is that? It's crazy. I'm just saying. I feel the urgency of every moment in my life so much more now that I am not a believer in heaven, that everything will go on and on and on and on and on. And my life doesn't have to be eternal for it to be important to me and those around me. Ken Ham is essentially pitching slavery. He's pitching slavery of the mind, slavery of the heart, and by effect, slavery of the body. And he's selling it as freedom. This is insanity. And it's not up to the rest of us to make sure that Ken Ham is able to understand the basics of evolutionary science. I think at this measure, he is simply a creature of confirmation bias. You know, he's got people who are going to confirm what he already thinks. He's not interested in the overwhelming avalanche of evidence for evolution. Evidence I wasn't even aware existed until I came out of the faith myself and I started to become honest with myself about what is and isn't real. You know, evolution threatened my specialness, right? I was no longer a hand-picked soldier, adopted by the most powerful king in the universe to go on a divine mission, a lifelong mission with eternal reward, mansions in heaven, streets of gold, pearly gates. I am not that important. The universe doesn't give a shit whether or not I exist, and that's just fine. Right? That's just fine. I realize it doesn't matter if the universe cares if I exist. It doesn't matter if there's not a divine plan. It just means that what we do with and for each other becomes all the more critical. Humans solving human problems, humans helping each other, people being there for people, enhancing the human experience, making the most of these temporary moments on this earth. Ken Ham, good luck with the book. Good luck with the book. I'm sure it's going to play great to the evangelical homeschool crowd. These pod people who were not unlike what I was 20-some years ago, 30-some years ago, who existed in a microcosm of reinforcement and constant confirmation bias. I'm sure they're going to say, yes, now evolution has again definitively been debunked. Of course, I wonder why God, your specific God, wouldn't part the curtain of the skies himself and just sort of debunk the whole thing and tell us what he or she wanted. No. Ken Ham has been charged to go out and do battle, to speak on behalf of God and debunk this evil, devil-born science of evolution. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And for anybody else who might be watching this circus from the periphery, just know that I became the happiest in my life when I walked away from this magical thinking. And the people that I know in the atheist community and the atheist movement, the people who I interact with online and at conferences and events and tour stops and gatherings and whatever, these people, I ask them point blank, would you ever go back? Would you ever take the pill that puts you back in the matrix and you never knew any different and you were happily, blissfully ignorant and your religious life was what it was? I've met no one. I have met no one who ever said they'd go back. Because they are more fulfilled living an honest life, a truthful life on their terms. They're more fulfilled. They're more emotionally and intellectually healthy when they're not having to cram the magical thinking, this dogmatic religion into the round hole of reality. They are happier because now they're not born with guilt and shame and all this bullshit stuff that they're supposed to carry that was infected unto them by their ancestors. They get to be themselves, whatever that means when it comes to their identity, their goals, their value system, their sexuality. They are completely liberated. They are unshackled from the tethers of superstition. They would not go back. And atheism, honestly, it's not an inoculation against sadness or the harshness of life, but I would rather live a hard reality than a happy fantasy, and I think most people would agree. And by embracing that in our own lives, we are, in fact, happier and more well-rounded and more fulfilled people. Ken Ham, good luck with the book, pal. You're going to need it.